What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Casual Big Ten Podcast. Today is Tuesday, July 18th, 2023, and on today's episode, we're going to discuss everything you need to know for the upcoming football season in Maryland. That's right, it's the Terrapins today. I'm solo. I don't have a guest. I got 13 out of 14 teams guested up. I got a guest for each one of those, an expert, if you will. But today I'm going to be your expert because I reached out to many Maryland folks. I didn't hear back from many of them. I talked about this before. I'm not super surprised about that. That's fine. People didn't want to come on the show or just didn't want to respond. I understand. We got a lot of good guests on the other episodes, but as a completionist, which I am, I like to finish things that I got started. I was a little disappointed that I didn't get somebody from Maryland, but nonetheless, I'm going to give you an awesome episode today. It's going to be a little bit shorter than normal because I don't have anyone to, bounce questions off of or ideas or anything like that. It's just me, but we're going to talk about Maryland, everything that's upcoming. Stay tuned the rest of the week. We'll have some awesome guests Wednesday through Friday, and again, next week we'll have some even more. I wouldn't say even more amazing, but we will have even more amazing guests. They're not more amazing. There's just more of them. Does that make sense? I sure hope so. Let's talk about Maryland. Let's talk about them, man. Let's get into this. This offseason, a lot of things going on with Maryland in the transfer portal, and we're going to get into that. But first, we got to talk about these uniforms, right? The brand new uniforms that the Terrapins are going to be rolling out. I've discussed them multiple times this summer, maybe a little bit too much. That's very possible, maybe too much. But I love the new uniforms. I love the look. The script text just says Terps on the side of the helmet. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see that right now. This guy's even got a visor on that says Terps on it. That's pretty sick. I'd wear a visor if I could. Didn't wear one when I played, but if I could nowadays, I definitely would. Uniforms are going to be looking good. The Terps are going to be looking awesome when they take the field this fall. And they're going to have their main guy leading them, as always. And that guy is, of course, Mike Locksley. He's the coach for the Maryland Terrapins. He has been there. Now, this was super interesting. I was looking this up. I want to pull this back up, make sure I don't get this wrong. Mike has been coaching for a long-ass time. The dude has been coaching since I was 6 years old. He started in 1992 at his alma mater, which was Towson, and he was the defensive backs coach. He has since moved to a more offensive-minded coaching approach, I guess you would say. He's been coaching offense for years now. But what an interesting track record he has as far as everything that he's been doing coaching-wise. He went to Navy Prep. He went to Pacific. This is all in the 90s, by the way. He was the wide receiver coach at Army. Then in 1997, he came to Maryland for the first time, and he was the running backs coach. Now, this is a part of the show where I would love to have an expert on because I don't know the connection that Mike has with Maryland. I really don't know what it is. But he was at Maryland, then he was gone, then he was back, then he was gone, and then he was back again. And this is how it went. In 2003, he left for the first time to go to Florida to be the running backs coach. Then he was at Illinois as the offensive coordinator. Then he went to New Mexico where he was his first head coaching job. After that, this is crazy. I mean, try to keep up with me on this. Comes back to Maryland in 2012. This was after 2 years at New Mexico. He's the OC, the interim head coach 3 years later for just like part of a season. Then he decides, you know what? I'm going to go to Alabama. And he was there for 3 years, 3 seasons at Alabama as the co-offensive coordinator, the offensive coordinator, and the OA, which I'm assuming is the offensive assistant. I don't know what that means. But then in 2019, he got the job offer again to come back to Maryland and be the head coach. And he has been there since 2019. In that time, he has gone 23-54 as the head coach. But the interesting thing is that he has made improvements every year. First year, he was 3-9. Then he was 2-3. So I guess he didn't make an improvement that year. That was the COVID year, though. 2-3, that doesn't count. So he went from 3-9. We'll skip the COVID year. 7-6 in 2021. And then last year, his best record One of the better seasons that Maryland's football has had in a long time. They were 8-5, really competitive team last year. Maryland's big problem that they have and what they run into is that they're in the Big Ten East, and that's just brutal. You have Michigan, you have Penn State, you have Ohio State, and you have to play them every year. And they play them tough. They played Michigan tough last year. What was the score to that game? I think it was only like 5 points, right? Let's click on their season from last year and just take a little peek at how the results went. It's going to be on here, the results. Okay, so their loss at Michigan was week 4 last year. That was a 7-point loss against a team that was in the playoffs. Then you go down to another team that was in the playoffs, Ohio State, which was their last loss of the year, a 13-point loss. So for me, it's going to sound crazy because Maryland is so far away from probably what they want to be, which is the Big Ten East champs, a playoff contender. They're so far away from that because of Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State. But you look at the scores, and then the Penn State lost 30-0. That was bad last year. But they're so close. They're really so close. They're so far away, but they're so close. You lose to Ohio State and Michigan by a combined 3 touchdowns. And those two teams lost in the playoffs for a chance to go to national championship by less than a touchdown. So if you do the math, the deductive reasoning here, let's just look at Michigan. They lost by 7 points to Michigan. Michigan lost by 5 or 6 points to TCU in the semifinals. That means, and this logic is totally unflawed, that means that Maryland was 11 points away from being in the national championship last year. That's how close they are. If you look at it like that, which I will. I'm going to do that today. So they're super competitive. The other thing about Mike is that he's universally loved. I've talked to, like I said, all my interviews are done now. I've talked to 13 different people in the Big Ten. Of the people that I brought up Mike Locksley with, they all love him. Nobody hates Maryland. Nobody hates Mike. Like I said, he's just like a universally loved guy. He's doing a great job at Maryland. He's really turned them around. And I'm excited to see what he's going to do this season. But the offseason, though, what did he do this offseason in the portal? Well, he brought in a couple of guys, and they're mainly wide receivers. And this is going to be a big year for their wide receivers. You have Tagovailoa, who's going to be their quarterback again. I'll never know how to pronounce his first name. I think it's Tualia. Is that right? Tualia? Tagovailoa. He's going to have 2 guys, his top 2 receivers, I think. I mean, on the depth chart, the top 2 guys right now from the offseason are both transfers. You have Tyrese Chambers, the guy that's on the screen right now. He's from FIU. Over the last 2 years, he has had 13 touchdowns and 1,600 yards receiving. And now he's coming to the Big Ten where he's going to try to match those numbers or even do better. He's going to be your number 1 guy, wide receiver, I think. Again, this is where I would have liked to have an expert on. The number 2 guy, Caden Prather, he's coming from West Virginia, so he's already played big-time football. Not saying that Tyrese hasn't. Conference USA is fine. But Caden Prather, he's coming from West Virginia, and he had 500 yards last year and 3 touchdowns. So the guys that you have, quote-unquote, coming back for Maryland are guys that have never been there before. So it's going to be really interesting from the wide receiver standpoint. You also look at the portal for Maryland, and one of the shocking things to me was how much movement there was on the offensive line specifically. There was a ton of guys that left. There was a ton of guys that came in. I have a hard time keeping a track of offensive line as it is. If you go to their On3 portal website for Maryland, it's just like all offensive linemen leaving, coming in, leaving, coming in. So I have no idea what we're going to get from the offensive line. I'm hoping that they can protect this guy, the guy I was just talking about, Tualia. I'm going to say that's how you pronounce his name so I can just keep moving with that. Senior this year. Last year, pretty good numbers. He had 18 touchdowns. He did have 8 interceptions. Not the best ratio in the world, but not the worst. I rank him in the top 5 for guys that are coming back that played in the Big Ten last year. It's tough to say that he's going to be a top 5 guy this year. I'm thinking, you go down the list, even just in the East. J.J. McCarthy, Kyle McCord, Drew Aller. Those three guys might all be better than him. And then you go over to the West and you have a guy that won a Big Ten championship, Cade McNamara. You have Tanner Mordecai coming in. That's 5 guys right there. But if you take away the guys that haven't played or didn't play last year, like Mordecai, like Aller, even Cade, technically, you could say didn't really play last year. I think he's one of the top 5 guys that's returning. He's very competitive. If you watch his games, it just jumps off the screen that he really cares. I mean, obviously, all the college football players that are playing in the Big Ten, they care about winning, but he's got that bloodline. His brother's in the NFL. He's been groomed, I would say, for this. That's a weird word to say, but he's been groomed for this, and this is his senior season. So I'm expecting big things out of him. Last year, he gets injured in the Indiana game. He hurts his knee. That was early on in the season. What game was that? That was halfway through the season. That was their 6th game. And I really don't think he was 100% the rest of the year. I felt like he was kind of hobbled the rest of the year. I think that if Tualia stays healthy, he can have a great year. I'm not going to sit here and say he's going to have the best year in the Big Ten. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to say that for Maryland and for what you can expect from him, it could be a great year. You could be looking up and he's got 27 touchdowns this year and 5 interceptions. Is that what I'm predicting? Sure. Why not? 27 and 5 for Tualia. And I think if he does that, somewhere around 3,000, 3,500 yards maybe. It depends on how much they open it up, and it depends on how much the offensive line, which again is going to be riddled with new guys. I'm going to look at their real quick. I'm going to pull this up. Let me pull this up real quick. I want to look at how many projected starters are going to be transfers on the offensive line because I think it's a lot. It says that there's only 1. But, you look at the depth chart and, you have a bunch of guys that are behind the quote-unquote starters. So we'll see. You have a freshman starting. You have a sophomore starting. I don't know what the offensive line is going to do. I need to do more research on that, and I'm not going to. I'm just not going to. The offensive line is not my thing. But I think Tualia could have a good year. If he gets some help from this guy, it's Roman Hemby. He's a sophomore this year. Last year he had 10 touchdowns. I was shocked by that. I don't remember him getting 10 touchdowns last year, but close to 1,000 yards. He's going to be your lead back this year. I think he's going to be your workhorse. I don't project that. I was looking at the wrong team. This is Nebraska. I got pulled up. What an idiot I am. Let's go to Maryland. Let's go talk about that offensive line some more, shall we? Maryland. Offensive line, they got 2 transfers. 3. 4. Now, 2 of the guys were there last year, it looks like. Yeah, I mean, they got, man, I don't know. They got 1 guy that started at Maryland, started his career at Maryland on the offensive line and is still there, and that's Delmar Glaze. But are they going to be able to block for Roman Hemby? I don't foresee the other guys they have listed on their depth chart getting many snaps for them. I think Roman's going to be the guy. I have no sources on that. Again, if I had a guess on maybe, I'll stop making that excuse. I'm just going to say it because you guys came here for facts, right? Roman Hemby is going to be the workhorse. He's going to be the guy. He's going to be the one getting all the carries. And we'll see what he can do with that. I mean, I'm hoping that he has a great year. Once again, though, you look at the Big Ten East, and I mean, he's just buried when you start comparing him to the other backs that are in his division even, not even in his conference, in his division. Nick Singleton, Kaytron Allen, BJ Corum. BJ Corum. Oh, blowjob Corum. What is his name? Blake. Why'd I call him BJ? Then I almost called him CJ. What am I talking about? All right. Blake Corum, Donovan Edwards, Mayan Williams, Trayvon Henderson. There's 6 backs right there. I think they're all better than Roman. But we'll see what Roman Hemby can do this year. I don't know. We'll see. It's a lot of wait and see with Maryland because, again, you look up and down their offensive line, you don't know what you're going to get. Hopefully it's good. Hopefully Tagovailoa can stay healthy. It's all hopeful stuff. It's all hopeful. You got to be hopeful if you're a Terrapins fan this year. Here's a guy, though, that I think is going to have a breakout year. His name is Corey Dutches. It's spelled D-Y-C-H-E. I want to say Dyches. Is it Dyches? Is it Dyches? I'm going to say Dyches. Man, I'm tough with names. Corey, though, the tight end. I talked about the wide receivers. The main two guys are transfers. I talked about Roman Hemby. It's only his second year. I talked about the offensive line. If you are a senior quarterback and you're in the huddle and you're looking at all those things I just mentioned, and then you look up and you see Corey, you get a little bit more confidence. He's going to be the safety valve this year. I'm expecting Corey to have a big year. I really am. I think that he could be, he's not even mentioned in some of the top tight end conversations, and I'm not sure why. He's got 7 career touchdowns so far. I'm going to say if the line was 7 for him this year to score 7 touchdowns, I would take the over. I like Corey a lot. He had 39 receptions last year. I think he would go over that this year. I think that Tagovailoa is going to look for him as a guy that he can rely on and that he can go to and say, this is my guy right here. I'm going to send it his way, and he's going to come down with it. Corey Dyches, watch out for him this year. Let's talk about defense for just a moment. I don't want to stay too long. It's already been longer than I thought I was going to go. You want to circle a guy on the Maryland defense, you want to circle Bo Brady then. This guy was the leading tackler for Maryland last year, and he's back. Now, do you want your leading tackler to be your free safety? Not usually. I wouldn't if I was the defensive coordinator. But he is the leading tackler. He had 55 last year. He also had, 2 interceptions? Let me make sure. 2 interceptions. He's the guy that you want to circle and say, this is Maryland defense right here. I like Bo Brady. I've admitted multiple times I don't know enough about defense that I probably should, but I did know his name from last year, and I think that you guys should keep an eye on him. Bo, good luck to him this year. I think he's going to have a great year leading that. I'm going to say leading the Terrapins defense this year. All right, let's jump into this, and then we'll wrap it up. We have the Maryland schedule up on the screen right now. I have predicted, and I don't have anyone to go against me, so this is just what's going to happen. I've predicted Maryland to go 8-4. I think they're going to be good still. Once again, I'm going to keep harping on this. Here's your problem, though. You play Ohio State, you play Penn State, you play Michigan. That's 3 right there. The other loss that I have for Maryland is, I picked Nebraska. What was I thinking? Nebraska at home. It might have been a bad pick. Hey, listen. Listen. Let me get in closer real quick. I'm the first to admit when I am wrong about stuff. I don't mind. Am I wrong about this pick? Maybe. But am I going to change it? I'm definitely not. Maryland's going to, a lot of teams, even when they're having a great year, they have that one game where they slip up and you're like, how the hell did Maryland lose to Nebraska this year? What was going on in that game? And I'm going to stick with that. I'm going to stick with that game and say that they're still going to lose that game. Nebraska's going to win that game. It's going to be at home for Nebraska late in the season. We'll see if Maryland can, stay healthy. And then they have that game against Michigan the next week. If you go through the schedule, they have Towson, Coach Loxley's alma mater, definitely winning that game. You have Charlotte. You have Virginia, who I'm being told is down this year. Don't know if that's true. Their first road test is at Michigan State. They're better than Michigan State. Sorry, Spartan fans, if you're listening. Maryland's going to be better than you this year. They come back home against Indiana. That's a win. Their first loss is in Week 6. I'm predicting at Ohio State. Now, listen. Ohio State's got some things going on now. They got a new quarterback. I've been talking about this on many episodes. If you listen to the episode with Doug LeMaurice, new quarterback, you're not really sure, but he is a 5-star. They got great wide receivers, but that's a game I would circle and say, hey, if we can go steal one right here, we steal one right here, Woo! Then you're 6-0 and you're going back home to play Illinois before the bye week. You have Northwestern, which, I mean, that's a win. That is a win. I think that they're 8-1 to start. Is that 8-1? 7-1 to start. You're back home against Penn State. Going to be a huge game for Maryland. It's going to be a put up or shut up game, and I think they're going to have to shut up because I think Penn State is that good. I already talked about the Nebraska upset. I think that they could be a little bit down. It's a 3-game stretch right there where you have Penn State, you come back home against Nebraska, but you're thinking about, hey, we got to go to Michigan next week. Or I'm sorry, Michigan's coming to town. I totally flipped that up. If you're watching on YouTube, you're like, what is this dude talking about? You play Penn State at home, then you go to Nebraska, and you're thinking, man, next week we got to play Michigan at home. Tough. I will say the one thing they have going for them is the Penn State and Michigan are at home. I just don't think that they're quite there yet. I just don't think, like I said, a lot of transfers coming in. Your mainstay is your quarterback, which is great, but can he stay healthy? And then you finish with probably the second worst team in the Big Ten, Rutgers, on the road. That should be a win. Listen, I think Maryland's going to a bowl. Coach Loxley's won the 2 bowl games he's been to. 2 years ago, he won the Pinstripe Bowl, and then last year he won the most exciting bowl in football, the Duke's Mayo Bowl. That's everyone's favorite bowl, right? You get the mayonnaise poured on you afterwards. I think it'll be a better bowl this year. I think they get to 8 wins, and they go to a bowl game, and then let's see, play a team like LSU or, Tennessee or something like that, and see how they stack up against somebody else in the country. I think it's going to be a fun year. I'm excited. I like Maryland. There's a lot of things I like about Maryland. I really do. I don't want to seem like I'm down on Maryland, but I just don't think they're going to have – I don't think they have the team coming back that they're going to need to win the East this year. And my final thought about that, I think this is what's tough, and I've been saying this the whole episode. You're in the Big Ten East. If Maryland was in the Big Ten West, I would bet all my money that they're going to win it. I think that they're better than all the teams in the West. I really do. I think Maryland's that good. They're just overshadowed. And that's tough for them. All right, tomorrow, let's make sure my slide is working here. I might have messed this up. Nope, it's working. Tomorrow on the episode, we have Ryan Burns. We're talking Minnesota, talking about talking down on teams. I haven't talked highly of Minnesota. Ryan's great, though. Great interview. Gopher Radio is where he's from. Come back tomorrow. We're talking Minnesota. We got more coming up this week. There's so many episodes. Football's almost here. We'll see you guys in the future.